Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Idle No More Solutions for Reducing Fleet Idling webinar of Empire Clean Cities Trucking Association of New York, United Metro Energy, and Blackburn. Today, we will be talking about solutions for reducing fleet idling. First, we will start with Zach Miller from TANY, who will be talking about some of the New York City's idling laws and specifically about the sticker program. Then he will hand it off to James Halbert and Eric Kang from United Metro Energy, who will be going more in depth about the New York City idling law, and they will be giving their perspective as a fleet. Then we will continue with Ben Dibble from Blackburn Energy, who will be talking about the idle reduction technologies. We will finish with Gardner from Empire Clean Cities about some of the idle reduction resources and why this is important. And we will finish off with audience Q&A. I will be now handing it off to Zach Miller.
Thank you so much, Lara, and thank you all for joining us today. Really important topic here. You could go to the next slide, please. So I'm Zach Miller, the Director of Metro Region Operations for the Trucking Association of New York. Next slide, please. And so I'm going to give a brief rundown of the law. Our friends at United Metro Energy are going to do a deeper dive into this. But NYC Administrative Code, Title 24, Section 24-163, no person should allow the engine of a motor vehicle to idle for longer than 3 minutes while parking, standing, or stopping, and then 1 minute when it's adjacent to a school. Next slide, please. And so there are some exemptions to this. Vehicles whose engine is used to operate a loading or unloading or processing device, and these include a lift gate, a reefer unit, oil delivery. Certified clean idle trucks are not exempt from this program currently, nor is if you're doing a DPF regen. Right now, those are not exempt from idling. But DEP does understand that given that there's citizen enforcement to this, and I know United Metro is going to talk about that more, there are violations that should not be going through because the vehicle is under the exemption code. So they created a program, processing device vehicle sticker exemption program, and you see the information there. You could always reach out to me and I could send you the link. But this is where DEP will inspect the vehicle, just make sure that that's how the lift gate works, that's how the reefer unit works, whatever would fall under the exemption. And as long as the vehicle passes, it will get a sticker, and that sticker should prevent fleets from getting those tickets when they're operating their processing device. Next slide, please. And this is an enforcement. Citizen gets 25% of the fine. So a $350 fine is $87.50. This is only against commercial vehicles or buses. Every vehicle is under the same idling law, but citizens can only write complaints to commercial vehicles or buses. Next slide, please. And this is what I really want to focus on, because getting these summonses has been a challenge. And so there are some proactive steps that can be taken right now. One of them is to search for your idling tickets. Now, it's not super easy to do right now, unfortunately, and that's something that we're working on to make this a little bit more streamlined. But what you can do is you can go to NYC Open Data, and I apologize if this is difficult to read. Again, feel free to reach out to me, and I can walk you through this. But you go to the Open Data, you go to the filter, you want to make sure it's respondent last name. That's how they identify corporations. And you want to just put in the code for idling, because New York City Open Data, if you don't filter it out by the code, you could see all sorts of crazy things. So you want to just make sure that you have the company name in there. You have it under idling. You want to search for your ticket status, and then you'll be able to see how many open idling tickets you have. And then next slide, please. And this is the website for the Open Data. You want to make sure it's the oath hearings. You have to be very specific here to make sure you're getting just the information you want and not a barrage of numbers and violations and things that might not even apply to you. And again, I'm happy to send you this link after the webinar. Just reach out to me. Next slide. And so tracking the tickets is one thing. Another thing is the evidence, because if you look at the evidence, hey, sometimes you might say, you know what, that driver was idling. This is clear cut. I'm just going to pay the fine. And sometimes look at the evidence and say, I don't think so. I don't think this was valid. We want to fight this, but you have to know. So right now it works where DEP has to send you the evidence package. So these are some contacts at DEP who have been very good at sending that evidence over to fleets or to their lawyers to make sure that they can review that evidence. So this is what the evidence package should be. It should be the video, a copy of the summons, a redacted complaint, and some screenshots of the vehicle. There might be an NYS Secretary of State search or a DOT SAFER report. We don't have time to dive too deep into that, but it could be there. Send them the specific summons number that you want to see. And then when they send you the link, it's to the DEP server. So you're going to have to download the video if you want to keep it for more than 3 days. The link is only active for 3 days. Well, there are a couple, but one of the issues is you download it, but it's a little too big to send to somebody. But regardless, that is what your evidence package should look like. And those are DEP contacts to be able to do that. Next slide, please. So that's what I have. I really want to make sure that you're aware of sort of how to find these tickets, how to get the evidence, things like the DEP exemption sticker, tools that haven't been out in the public as much. But I really want to pass it over to JJ Halbert and Eric Kang from United Metro Energy, who could really talk about the fleet applications of this and some best practices.
Thanks, Zach. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for having us be part of this. So we are one of the few larger oil companies in the 5 boroughs, and this is a challenge for us, especially around the schools, because we do a majority of the New York City schools. So what we've tried to do is that once Eric brought this to our attention and presented the slideshow, we try to coach our drivers as into part what the best practices are to do in this situation. So usually, it starts off with their pre-trip in the morning where they're walking around their truck and everything like that. Paperwork is a big involvement with us. So we try to encourage them to do their paperwork while they're at the terminal, anything that they can, figure out their route, where they're going, have everything set up ahead of time. This way, when you get to a stop, you're not putting yourself in a bad position. In New York City, you're not allowed to leave an oil truck unattended. So the truck needs to be turned off and it needs to be locked. And we encourage our drivers to follow these procedures, especially when you're going to meet a super in a building, because that could be where most of your time is, where the truck is going to be idling. They're not allowed to hook up any hoses or anything until they make contact with the super. Once they have everything involved that they need to take care of, safe delivery, checking the gauge and so forth, then they hook up and then they'll start to run the truck. What we've encouraged them to do also is never just sit there. If you go to your next stop, take care of your paperwork. If you're going to eat your lunch, if you're going back to the terminal to load, we try to encourage them to do that. It's all about being aware of your situation and taking care of what you need to get done. It's a challenge with the weather. We experience, hassles with the weather, extreme conditions, whether it be cold or whether it be hot. Drivers outside in the cold and everything like that. He wants to get inside and warm up the truck a little bit. What we do is that we encourage them we have out winter wear for everybody. Everybody gets hats, gloves. They get new jackets every winter and stuff like that. We try to help them prepare to sit in the truck when it's cold. And we offer cooling towels and water and stuff like that during the summertime when the trucks, we're trying not to have them run the trucks. People think they're discreet, but they're not as discreet as they seem to be during this process. What our drivers also do is that if they witness somebody videotaping the truck while they're making a delivery, anything like that, we call and then I forward it to Eric and we log it down so we could prepare in case we get a situation like this. A lot of people don't understand the process of delivering oil and stuff like that. Some people say you should just turn off the truck and then move, because we get people that complain about, blocking the streets and stuff like that. It's a very, very difficult challenge for our drivers, any drivers making any kind of delivery in the city. So we try to train them and do best practices the best we can so they don't get put in these situations. Now, Eric's going to speak about this thing. He did a fantastic job about bringing this to the attention of everybody, and this will, in the process, will help everybody that has to deal with these situations on a regular basis.
Yeah, thanks, JJ. Good morning, everyone. My name is Eric Kang. I'm the assistant general counsel here, and part of my job as being the company lawyer is handling summonses like this and figuring out how we can successfully dispute and fight them. And so there came a time where I'm sure, like many of you participating here, where we're getting a lot of these summonses. So I wanted to get an understanding of what we're doing and how we can kind of fix some of these issues. And as Zach mentioned, this we have this law, and unfortunately, this is something that we're going to have to, deal with. So when I conferred with JJ, who does a fantastic job handling all safety issues at United Metro, I tried to get an understanding of what was going out there on the road with these drivers. I mean, they have millions of challenges on their day to day, and now this is something that they have to be concerned about, right? Somebody filming them and trying to hit us with summonses. So if you can, Lara, if you can kind of go through the slideshow as I'm speaking here. So we try to let the drivers know, this is the law. We can't idle unless we are in the course of making a delivery. The engine should be off, right? And so, as JJ mentioned, we understand that this is just a part of the job, and part of the challenges in trying to comply with the law, and we try to make them feel as comfortable as possible. So without diving too much into how I deal with the summonses, and I am happy to address some of the questions towards the end. But one of the things that I focus on with the drivers is, again, understanding the audience. The drivers are there, they're thinking, oh, this is another thing I have to worry about. But I also relate, Lara, if you can go to the slide towards the end where you know, basically, yeah, if we can go back to the prior slide. So I told them, hey, listen, every time somebody submits this footage and the fine is paid, then the individual who brings that summons gets a percentage. So I told the drivers, I mean, listen, do you guys get paid 87.50 for 3 minutes? You don't. And unfortunately, there are opportunistic people who go around filming, these vehicles, and some of which, again, and this is a question more on the legal end about due process. We don't really know. They could be fabricating some stuff. We're not going to really get into that for now, but again, this is the way I try to connect and say, listen, it's challenging enough as it is. You're trying to do your job. Just understand, every time that you idle, you're basically giving money away to somebody. And I think that connected with a lot of the drivers there. Again, this is an ongoing challenge, and we do what we can to try to minimize the instances. But I think this is a very informative session here where we can kind of toss some ideas around as to how we can deal with effective or have effective solutions to kind of combat this, because again, the law is not going to change tomorrow. We just have to figure out ways that we can deal with it today. So this is these are articles that I pulled for the drivers to look at, and it's people that are basically saying, I made tens of thousands of dollars, that, this is a piece of cake. And, you know, given the law and the way it's stated, we're very limited in the way we can combat this. And so I think the effective solutions is, like JJ was referencing earlier, is try to make them feel comfortable so that they don't feel like they need to have that engine on. Zach?
think it's now over to me. Hi, everyone. My name is Ben Dibble. I'm head of business development at Blackburn Energy. We are brought into this conversation as potential technology solution partner to this anti-idling problem. Or if you can go to the next slide. So Blackburn Energy, we've invented and globally patented a kinetic energy recovery system that we call RelGen that creates electricity from a truck's spinning drive shaft. We have different applications, but for anti-idling, we have two specific use cases. The first one is the liftgate electrification. Laura, if you could hit the... There you can see an animation. Our technology is that yellow piece. And we do that to power the batteries for lift gates. And then the second one is sleeper cab electrification. Press that, awesome. Once again, our technology is in the orange, and we're able to power batteries to electrify the sleeper cab. Or if you go to the next slide. So for the over-the-road drivers and fleets coming into New York City, we can help them power the sleeper cab through powering their electric APU. So whether that's Thermo King or Bergstrom, you can find our technology on the Bergstrom website. We've been studied independently by Toyota Tusho with one of their fleets, TLD Logistics, out in Knoxville, Tennessee. And they were able to save upwards of $10,000 by using our technology to electrify the sleeper cab, all while eliminating the need to engine idle. Or if you go to the next slide, please. But I think more for New York City and those making deliveries throughout the city and utilizing the liftgate, we are able to power the liftgate. As a Massachusetts company, most of our customers are here in the area. And this is a testimonial from a beer distributor that hauls for Budweiser in the North Shore of Massachusetts. They were able to get savings of $7,000 in just 1 year alone through eliminating the need to idle their engine while powering their liftgates and saving on replacing batteries. Lastly, the driver loves the liftgate usage after they added RelGen to their tractor trailer, as we're able to keep the batteries full throughout the day, allowing that liftgate to run better. Or if you go to the next slide. Below, you can actually see some of the liftgate performance of one of our customers through a 12-hour shift. They made 67 stops in 1 day. And we're able to keep those liftgate batteries powered throughout the day. And when it comes back, the ending voltage was close to full. Meanwhile, they didn't have to engine idle. They were able to save on fuel, reduce maintenance cost, and reducing CO2 emissions. Or last slide. And so once again, this is another case study. A customer throughout a month use, they were able to produce more energy than they ended up consuming, averaging 80 lifts a day in the city, making stops 1.5 miles in between each stop. And the liftgate batteries never dropped below 80%. So we came in and partnered with TANY and Empire Clean Cities as a potential solution that allows you to eliminate the need to idle without having to worry about battery performance for your lift gates or sleeper cabs. Thank you. Lauren, on to Joy.
All right. Thanks so much, Ben, and Zach, JJ, and Eric for your presentations. So we've heard about what the local laws are, as well as some measures that folks are taking in the city to address those, and some technologies that are available to help you avoid these tickets. So now I just want to talk a little bit about other reasons why not idling your vehicles is important, as well as some tools and resources that are available for free to fleets, as well as some potential funding sources to access some of these technologies. So next slide. So just quickly, who am I? Who is Empire Clean Cities? We are a New York based 501c3 environmental nonprofit focused on reducing emissions and cutting petroleum consumption within the transportation sector. We're also the U.S. Department of Energy's designated Clean Cities Coalition for the region. Next slide. One moment. So while Laura gets those slides back up, the Department of Energy's Clean Cities program is a program that's been around for 30 years and is housed out of the Vehicle Technologies Office. And we are one of 75 different coalitions across the country doing the work that we do. Laura, can you go back a couple slides, please? So if you are operating outside of the New York City and Westchester area, there is likely a Clean Cities Coalition in those other regions. If your fleet is state or countrywide, there is a local Clean Cities that will be available to help you. Next slide. So a little bit about what we do. We provide education and outreach to decision makers, fleets, and the public, like hosting webinars like these. We provide alternative fuel planning support, training, and access to technical assistance. We connect fleets and municipalities with alternative fuel providers, anti-idling technology providers, industry partners, and other resources. We identify funding and incentive opportunities, which I'll talk about shortly. When we collect and analyze regional data so that we can track emissions locally, as well as fuel pricing. We also support alternative fuel corridor planning. So if your fleet is transitioning to an alternative fuel or considering EVs or other technologies, we want to make sure that you get safely from point A to point B. Next slide. So, beyond the costly tickets that we've heard from Zach and from JJ and Eric, why else is idle reduction important? So idling is expensive. When a vehicle is idling, it can consume 1 gallon of fuel each hour. And that varies obviously on the size of the vehicle, but that is just wasted fuel, especially if you aren't actively making a delivery and you need your vehicle on for various reasons, or if the climate is temperate. It's just a waste of fuel. And especially with the cost of fuel these days, it can really affect your bottom line. In addition, other expenses related to idling is engine wear. So engine operation is engine wear. So as your engine is on necessarily 1 hour of idling per day for 1 year can be the equivalent of 64,000 miles of engine wear. Which obviously means more frequent maintenance required on the engine and greatly reduces the life cycle of that vehicle. Idling is also especially hard on diesel particulate filters, which means that they get dirtier faster and they can't regenerate during engine idling. And it also means they would need to be replaced more often. Next slide. So beyond the cost for a business, it also affects their community. So according to Argonne National Lab, the resting period for a truck idling consumes about 1 billion gallons of diesel fuel each year, which means it emits 10 million tons of carbon dioxide, 55 tons of nitrous oxides, and 400 tons of particulate matter. So often vehicles are idling in areas that are already overburdened with other pollution, sources of pollution, and it can directly affect health and quality of life for communities across the country. Diesel particulate matter and carbon dioxide have been directly linked to respiratory issues such as high asthma rates, links to respiratory illnesses and cancers. Also, as our friend from Argonne in the chat mentioned, idling is quite noisy too, so it also affects quality of life of residents, particularly in dense urban areas like New York City, where you can have several thousand people on a city block where you're making your delivery. And also, it's important because idling is illegal in New York City. Next slide. So as I mentioned, a couple of the tools that are available at cleancities.energy.gov under the technical resource team, Argonne National Lab and the Department of Energy have developed something called IdleBox. So this IdleBox is tool full of fact sheets, fact cards, stickers, bookmarks, and other resources. There are also some great sign templates and poster templates that you can use in your local fleets, or if you want to share why idling is important and why folks should care about it. There are also pledge forms and policy templates to help address and change local laws if you're outside of New York City and interested in implementing an idling law locally. There's also an idle reduction cost savings calculator and a table of technology solutions with manufacturer links. So Blackburn Energy has a great technology that's available, but there are also other technologies that might fit various use cases. It also has a database of idling regulations. So if you are unsure, if you're expanding your business or you're doing business outside of the city, you can see what the local regulations are across the country. Next slide. So again, idle reduction equipment references. There's this is available on Argonne National.
No good.
And it's linked to the in the IdleBox on cleancities.energy.gov. And so there are various technology solutions that are available based on class size and type of vehicle. Next slide. And this idle reduction savings calculator will help if you are a fleet manager estimate how much you can save by using various idle reduction technologies. So as you're planning on how you want to address idling locally, this is a great tool, a great free resource for you to use in making those estimates. Next slide. This is the database that I mentioned earlier. And the IdleBox toolkit, I've been told, is going to be updated this summer. So keep an eye out for those changes, and we'll be sure to notify everybody via our Empire Clean Cities newsletter, and we'll also let Zach and the Trucking Association of New York, we'll let them know when that is available, when those updates are posted. Next slide. So there are some state and federal grant programs available through the Diesel Emission Reduction Program, or DERA. And these funds allow for idle mitigation technology. The national program should be announced shortly, and the state program is available at various times of the year. So keep an eye out for that. And if you have any questions about either program or how to access those funds or submit an application, please reach out to us. My contact information is at the end, and we can help you access some of those funds or apply to access some of those funds. So in addition to the IdleBox savings calculator, the Alternative Fuel Data Center also has a couple of other emissions and cost savings tools that you can use for free, or that Empire Clean Cities can help you use to calculate the emissions and life cycle savings costs by reducing idling, by switching to alternative fuels, and by taking other measures to reduce your gas and diesel usage. Next slide. Okay, so that brings us to our Q&A. Please feel free to type your message in the chat, and we will go through the questions that they have. And I will just scroll through and see what we have in the box now. There's a question on, are there devices that measure idling time? I'll leave that, Zach and Ben, can you speak to that?
Ben, you could go first.
Yeah, customers that we work with tend to have a device like Samsara or Geotab that tracks idling time alongside a whole host of data. So that's usually where we work with our customers to track idling time.
Yeah, and there are a lot of fleets that do have the timers built in, like the idling timers, and they set it for 3 minutes and the engine shuts off. We have seen an issue with drivers overriding the idle time at certain points, and then this is a big challenge for rental and leasing companies, because at least fleets like United Metro, like JJ mentioned, he can talk with his drivers, he can work with them, he could really instill best practices. The issue is when sort of the vehicle owner and the vehicle operator are different entities, getting that education to the driver to stop the override has been a challenge. So it exists. It does work for the most part. There are just some challenges that we've run into in getting that information to the driver that, hey, this is here for a reason. It's a really important reason. Unless it's an emergency, you cannot be overriding this. And I do just want to say that, we have other fleets and other service providers here on this call. If any of you have a best practice that you put in your fleet, or if you have a service that you think would really make sense, please, this is an open forum to talk about best practices and things that fleets can be doing to reduce their idling. So please let us know.
Yeah, absolutely, Zach. This is Pedro from T-Mobile's business team here, local to New York City. I have a partner of mine, Michael McNulty from Geotab. And for those who don't know who Geotab is the largest and most awarded GPS tracking fleet management solution in the world, tracking over 4 million vehicles worldwide. And we definitely do quite a bit in this area in space. And the solution is highly regarded because it's so customizable. So you could customize it to the fact and the tune of these specific, laws or regulations of, 3 minutes here to 1 minute near a school area, and be able to be alerted before you start, losing money out the end, out the other end, So, Mike, if you'd like to mention something in regards to that and where we could fit and add value.
Yeah, sure. So thanks for the previous mention of Geotab. We have a wide footprint when it comes to providing data analytics, and our device is very cost effective and a great application for you to be able to customize any level of data. So we're continuously collecting gas, diesel, and EV consumption, and we can certainly circulate any information for anyone to learn more.
I think that's great, and I think it's also important to remember, as Joyce said, it is illegal, and we talked about New York City's rules, but every state municipality, they have slightly different idling regulations, and most of us do not just operate in New York City. So it's important to be cognizant of the idling laws in your jurisdiction, in the places that you service, and when you talk about working with your drivers, when you talk about solutions that make sense for you, that's something to be cognizant of too, where it can't just be, well, that's the New York City code and that's what we have to go with. Some places are more stringent than New York City, some places aren't. It is something that you really have to be cognizant of throughout your route.
And if you just to pitch Clean Cities again, if outside of New York City in your operations, I really encourage you to reach out to your local coalition. If you're not sure who they are, on the next slide will be my contact information. And so you can contact your local clean cities and they can help track down what the local laws are for you in their territory. Great. Any other questions or final thoughts?
I have a question.
Yeah, go for it.
So we've gotten a handful of these over the years. Maybe 2 or 3 years ago, we were pretty easily able to rebut most of these based upon our GPS tracking information, which is hardwired to our ignition. Now we're seeing, I mean, at least I'm seeing a lot more appeal requests, and them basically trying to rebut the proposition that we weren't idling after we, I believe, successfully established that we weren't. Is it just us? Is that in line with anyone else's experience that the agencies are getting way more aggressive and trying to just close any possible loopholes or shifting the burden of proof or anything else along those lines?
No, we've seen that. We've heard from that, and that is why TANY is engaged with both DEP and the city council to make sure that this is a program that has due process. That when a fleet is doing something that they shouldn't be doing, that there's enforcement for that. But when a fleet is not doing something that they shouldn't be doing, they're not penalized for that either. So what you have been seeing is what's been tracking with what we've been hearing, and that's why we're engaged with the agency and with the city council to make sure that there is due process and equity in this program. And feel free to reach out to me offline, and we could talk through it a little bit further.
Thank you, Zach. And I guess one kind of related question, I really appreciate you share. I don't know if it was you or another speaker sharing the agency contacted information to request their evidence, because in some cases it's pretty easy to rebut because the evidence is not strong, the video is not clear, there's other possible explanations. Others is very hard, me seeing a video for the first time thinking I'm going to be able to say something, and not having that defense available to me. Do you know how long the typical turnaround time is once we put in a request for the evidence?
I've heard it's relatively smooth. A couple of days is from what I've heard.
Yeah,
But
Zach,
I will say that I don't fight them. So yeah, somebody who does fight them, please chime in.
Yeah, Zach. So Eric Kang here, United Metro. So I have a contact at the DP, and I'm happy to share. And I usually get the footage, like you said, within 1 or 2 days. And typically, as you mentioned earlier, we get footage, we get a couple of snapshots displaying the license plate and markings on the trucks, in addition to an affidavit from the individual who provided or recorded the footage. And the other point I want to kind of piggyback here is the due process, right? And my understanding is New York City is the only city in the country that has this program to allow individuals to kind of basically, crowdsource, regulating this and enforcing this anti-idling law. And, and I think that's a fine initiative when we're trying to get cleaner and go greener. But being an attorney here, right, the due process is very important. And given the way the technology is progressing now, especially with AI, we don't get an opportunity to ask the individual certain questions about how they obtained this footage, right, and certain specifics that'll help us understand and really corroborate, their claims. And so, Zach, I know in our prior conversations, you mentioned an incident where somebody was holding two phones, and one phone was used to record the footage, and the other phone was used to fabricate sounds. And so in my experience with the summonses that I've been disputing, I mean, thus far, I've been successful in a couple where the individual filming or truck was about maybe 20 to 30 feet away, and there's traffic sounds, and there's nothing to directly connect the idling sounds to our truck. And so again, I think due process is very important here. I think that's one of the challenges, but by and large, it appears that these oath judges will just take that as gospel and say, well, this is the footage, and we basically have to try to defend ourselves in any way we can. But by and large, when that footage is submitted, first thing we also do is we cross-reference our records to see if in fact our driver was idling. And in those instances, right, we don't have much of a defense. But in others where we feel like we can put up a defense and proffer any evidence, we'll do what we can. But again, the due process is I believe it's unfair. There's no due process here, and that's one of the challenges that we're dealing with every time we get these summonses.
Thanks. It would be great to connect with you both offline. I really appreciate your time and the resources you've shared.
Oh, absolutely. And again, I appreciate, Zach and others for setting this up, because we're not, yeah, the idea here is we're not trying to, circumnavigate around the laws. It's again, trying to find solutions. And just as a side issue for me from the legal perspective is, how can we make this more fair? Because, my personal opinion is the way the law is written, the way these things are effectuated, I think we need to have a little more fairness. And I do understand that, the dialing is an issue. But, again, this is something that, it's part of a larger conversation and trying to make those changes, those positive changes.
Yeah, that's exactly it. We do not condone idling, and when drivers do idle unnecessarily, it is important to have an enforcement as part of the tool in the toolbox. Hopefully we get to a point where idling declines so much in the city that the program becomes obsolete and irrelevant. And that's why it is so important to talk about best practices and available tools and technologies. But at the same time, we are working to make sure that there is due process in this program, that everyone is treated fairly, and that we can positively change behavior.
All right, Laura, can you go to the next slide, please? So again, here is our contact information. We'll be sharing these slides and the recording with everyone after this webinar. And again, just to reiterate, the laws are strict in New York City for a reason. And other cities across the country are also adopting similar regulations and piloting citizen report programs. And so, we're hoping that folks will take these tools and resources, contact Blackburn Energy, look at the idle box list of technologies that are available for implementing idle regulation, access and apply to some of these funding opportunities to install idle mitigation technologies into your vehicles. And hopefully this can be the first step of many in reducing emissions and saving money for your fleets. So thank you again, everybody, and enjoy the rest of your day.